Security tried to remove a disabled fan. What John Lennon did next left the crowd in shock. Liverpool, 1968, a city of docks and dreams, of rain-slicked streets and the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten songs. For John Lennon, it was the crucible, the raw, unforgiving landscape that had forged his spirit. Even as he soared to unimaginable heights of fame, the grit and soul of Liverpool clung to him, an indelible part of his being. He was a global icon, yet forever tethered to the cobbled lanes and working-class struggles of his youth. The air in Liverpool was thick with memory. Every brick, every pub, every corner held a piece of his past. The laughter, the fights, the endless hours dreaming of escape and glory. He had escaped, gloriously so, but the city never truly let him go. It was a constant whisper in his ear, a reminder of where he came from, of the people he had once been among. His fame was a double-edged sword. It brought adoration, wealth, and a platform to preach his evolving gospel of peace and love. But it also brought isolation, a detachment from the very people who had shaped him. He saw the world through a different lens now, from the gilded cages of celebrity. Yet the struggles of the common man, the marginalized, the forgotten, still resonated deep within his soul. Tonight he was back, not for a grand stadium spectacle, but for a more intimate, almost homecoming performance at a local venue, a charity event for a struggling community center. It was a rare return, a chance to reconnect with the roots that grounded him, to play for the people who had known him before the world knew his name. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a mixture of nostalgia, pride, and the ever-present unspoken expectation that he would somehow acknowledge his origins. John stood backstage, the muffled roar of the crowd a familiar comfort. Yoko was not with him tonight. This was a solo venture, a return to the raw, unadorned essence of his artistry. He adjusted his guitar, the familiar weight a comfort in his hands. He was ready for the music, for the communion with his audience, for the fleeting embrace of his past. He knew the crowd would be different here, less starstruck, more discerning. They were his people, and they would hold him to a higher standard. They would see through any pretense, any artifice. He was ready for their scrutiny, for their love, for their unspoken demands. But he was not ready for the unexpected interruption, the sudden jarring clash between the polished machinery of his fame and the raw human reality of his hometown. A clash that would expose a hidden truth about John Lennon, a truth rooted deep in the heart of Liverpool, a truth that would leave the entire arena in shock. The stage was set, not just for a concert, but for an unraveling, a moment where the legend would collide with the man. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. John Lennon, in the late 1960s, was a man perpetually caught between worlds. He was the global superstar, the voice of a generation, yet the gritty streets of Liverpool still echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the boy he once was. His return to his hometown was always a complex affair, a pilgrimage fraught with both nostalgia and a profound sense of unease. His music, even at its most experimental, carried the indelible stamp of his origins. The working-class anthems, the wry observations, the raw emotional honesty, these were all products of Liverpool's unique spirit. He was an artist who had transcended his environment, yet remained deeply rooted in its soil. This duality was a constant source of creative tension, a wellspring of both inspiration and internal conflict. The city itself was a character in his life story, a demanding matriarch who both nurtured and challenged him. Its people, his people, held a unique claim on him. They had seen him before the fame, before the adulation, before the myths. They knew the flaws, the struggles, the raw ambition that had driven him. And in their eyes, he often sought a reflection of his true self, unvarnished by celebrity. His fame had built walls around him, layers of security, publicists and sycophants. He lived in a world of privilege, far removed from the daily struggles of the Liverpool dockworkers and factory hands. Yet the memory of those struggles, the empathy for the marginalized, the innate sense of justice still burned brightly within him. It was a paradox he grappled with constantly. How to be a voice for the common man when he was no longer one of them? He carried the burden of his past, the early abandonment, the loss of his mother, the relentless drive to prove himself. These were the unseen scars that shaped his art, his activism, his often unpredictable behavior. He was a man who preached peace, yet often found himself embroiled in conflict, both external and internal. The contradictions were a constant companion, a shadow that followed him from the recording studio to the protest march, from the quiet intimacy of his home to the blinding glare of the stage. He was a man of paradoxes, a walking enigma even to himself, perpetually searching for a sense of belonging, a sense of peace that always seemed just out of reach. The public saw the headlines, the controversies, the carefully crafted image. They saw the rock star, the icon. But behind the dark glasses, in the quiet moments between the chaos, John Lennon was a man grappling with his own humanity, his own flaws, his own profound sense of responsibility. He saw the determined faces of the guards, the distress on Thomas's face, the wheelchair. The music died on his lips. The smile vanished. A cold, hard knot formed in his stomach. He knew this scenario. He had seen it countless times, the powerful asserting their authority over the vulnerable, the rules overriding basic human decency. The security guards began to physically maneuver Thomas's wheelchair, attempting to push him back, away from the front row, away from the stage, away from his moment of joy. The crowd, sensing the tension, began to murmur, some confused, some indignant. John dropped his guitar, the sudden clang echoing through the now quieter hall. He stepped to the edge of the stage, his eyes blazing with an intensity that silenced the murmurs, silenced the guards, silenced everything. He had seen enough. The secret, it seemed, was not just the unspoken struggles of the marginalized, but the fierce, protective rage that still burned within John Lennon for those who were being pushed aside. The clang of John's dropped guitar reverberated through the Liverpool hall, a jarring punctuation mark to the escalating tension. All eyes now were on the stage and on the unfolding drama in the front row. The security guards, momentarily frozen by John's sudden, intense gaze, hesitated, their hands still on Thomas's wheelchair. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the raw, volatile energy of a confrontation brewing. John stepped to the very edge of the stage, his face a mask of cold fury. The peace-preaching icon had vanished, replaced by the street-tough Liverpudlian, the boy who had witnessed countless injustices in these very streets. His eyes, usually filled with a distant idealism, now burned with a dangerous intensity, fixed on the security guards. "What the bloody hell do you think you're doing?" "Stop." John's voice, when it came, was low, dangerous, stripped of its usual melodic quality. It was the voice of a man pushed to his absolute limit, a voice that carried through the now silent arena with an unnerving clarity. The head of security, a burly man named Dave, stepped forward, attempting to explain. "Mr. Lennon, sir, we're just ensuring safety. The wheelchair is a hazard in the front row. We need to move him to a more appropriate section." His tone was firm, professional, but laced with a hint of nervousness under John's unwavering stare. A hazard? John spat, the word dripping with contempt. He was searching for something real, something true, in a world that constantly demanded artifice. He was an open wound, exposed to the world, yet desperately trying to heal, to find a new path, a new voice, in the cacophony of his own fame. The stage was set, not just for a concert, but for a collision of worlds, a confrontation that would peel back the layers of myth and reveal the raw, beating heart beneath. A heart that, despite its fame, was fiercely empathetic, especially when it came to the forgotten, the overlooked, the vulnerable. The air in the Liverpool venue was thick with anticipation, a palpable hum of excitement and nostalgia. John Lennon, bathed in the warm glow of the stage lights, had just launched into a raw, stripped-down version of an early Beatles track, a nod to his roots that sent a ripple of delighted recognition through the crowd. The music was a bridge, connecting the global superstar to the local boy, the legend to the man. The audience was a sea of faces, a tapestry of Liverpool life. Among them, in the very front row, sat a young man named Thomas. He was in a wheelchair, his body twisted by a cruel twist of fate, but his eyes, bright and alive, were fixed on John with an almost religious fervor. Thomas had saved every penny, endured countless obstacles just to be here, to breathe the same air as his hero, to feel the music reverberate through his fragile frame. He had arrived early, navigating the crowded streets and the venue's less than accessible entrance with the help of a friend. He had secured his spot, a prime position directly in front of the stage, a dream realized. He swayed gently to the music, his face alight with pure, unadulterated joy. For Thomas, this was more than just a concert. It was a communion, a moment of profound connection with the voice that had soundtracked his life, that had given him hope in the darkest of times. But the machinery of celebrity, with its rigid protocols and its often blind adherence to rules, was about to collide with this moment of pure human connection. The security team, a mix of local bouncers and John's own touring detail, were constantly scanning the crowd, looking for potential threats, for any deviation from the carefully managed order. One of the bouncers, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, noticed Thomas. He saw not a devoted fan, but a potential obstruction, a safety hazard in the front row. The wheelchair, he reasoned, could block the view of others, or worse, become a liability in the event of an emergency. His orders were clear. Maintain order, ensure safety, remove anything that disrupted the flow. As John finished the song, the applause was thunderous. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that lit up his face. He was feeling the connection, the warmth of his hometown. He was about to launch into the next track when he saw it. Two security guards, their faces grim and determined, were moving towards Thomas. They began to speak to him, their gestures firm, indicating that he needed to move, to be relocated to a less prominent, less problematic spot. Thomas, his face falling, tried to explain, to plead, but his words were lost in the post-song chatter. His friend began to argue, but the guards were unyielding. John, from his vantage point on stage, saw the commotion. He pointed a trembling finger at Thomas, who sat in his wheelchair, his face a mixture of fear and humiliation. "You call him a hazard? He's a fan, you ignorant bastard. He's paid his money just like everyone else to be here." The audience, initially stunned, began to murmur, a low rumble of agreement and indignation. Many of them knew Thomas, or someone like him. They understood the daily struggles, the constant battles against a world not built for them. They recognized the injustice, and they recognized the raw, protective fury in John's voice. John took another step, his presence dominating the stage, the entire arena. "You think I don't know what it's like?" he challenged, his voice rising, now carrying clearly through the arena's sound system, raw and unfiltered. "To be told you don't belong? To be pushed aside? To be treated like you're less than human because you're different?" He paused, his gaze sweeping across the security team, then out into the silent crowd. "I grew up in these streets," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, the Liverpool accent more pronounced than ever. "I saw it every bloody day, the strong pushing the weak, the rich ignoring the poor, the normal trampling on anyone who didn't fit their neat little boxes." He looked directly at Thomas, his eyes softening for a fleeting moment before hardening again as he turned back to the guards. "This man," John said, his voice now a low growl, "is more of a man than any of you, with your bloody uniforms and your rules. He's got courage, he's got heart, he's got soul." The security guards, initially defiant, now seemed to shrink under the intensity of John's gaze, the sheer force of his raw emotion. The professional detachment began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of shame. They had expected a celebrity tantrum, a dismissive wave. They had not expected this unbridled personal fury, this profound connection to the marginalized. John stepped down from the stage, a move that sent a ripple of shock through the audience and caused his own road manager to gasp. He walked directly to Thomas, kneeling down beside his wheelchair, putting himself at eye level with the young man. "Are you all right, mate?" John asked, his voice now gentle, filled with genuine concern. He placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity, of profound empathy. Thomas, tears now streaming down his face, could only nod, overwhelmed by the sudden, unexpected kindness from his hero. John looked up at the security guards, his eyes still blazing but now with a quiet, unwavering resolve. "He stays," John said, his voice calm, but with an absolute finality that brooked no argument. "He stays right here, and if any of you lay another bloody hand on him, you'll answer to me." The threat was not explicit, but it hung in the air, cold and undeniable. The arena remained utterly silent, every single person holding their breath, witnessing a side of John Lennon rarely seen, a primal protective fury unleashed for the vulnerable. The secret, it seemed, was not just the depth of his empathy, but the unhealed scars of his own past, the profound connection he still felt for those who were being pushed aside. A connection rooted deep in the heart of Liverpool. The arena remained in a stunned, almost reverent silence. John Lennon, the global icon, knelt beside Thomas, the disabled fan, his hand resting gently on the young man's shoulder. The image was stark, powerful, a raw tableau of empathy and defiance against the rigid machinery of celebrity. The security guards, utterly bewildered, stood motionless, their authority momentarily shattered. "He stays," John repeated, his voice low but firm, his gaze sweeping across the now silent security team. "He stays right here, and if any of you lay another bloody hand on him, you'll answer to me." The words were not a threat, but a promise, delivered with an absolute conviction that left no room for argument. He then turned his full attention back to Thomas, his face softening. "You came a long way to be here, didn't you, lad?" he asked, his voice gentle, laced with the familiar Liverpool warmth. Thomas, still overwhelmed, managed a shaky nod. "Yes, John," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It means everything." John smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that transformed his face. "Well, it means everything to me that you're here, mate." He stood up, then, with a surprising tenderness, helped Thomas adjust his position so he had an even better view of the stage. "You've got the best seat in the house now, haven't you?" The audience, witnessing this profound act of kindness, erupted in a spontaneous, thunderous applause. It was not the usual rock concert roar, but a wave of genuine appreciation, a collective acknowledgement of the humanity that had just been so powerfully displayed. The security guards, caught in the unexpected outpouring of emotion, slowly, awkwardly retreated. John returned to the stage, picking up his guitar. The instrument felt different now. Imbued with the weight of the moment, the unspoken pact he had just made with his audience. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes sweeping across the faces, seeing not just fans, but people, individuals with their own struggles, their own quiet battles. "All right, Liverpool," he shouted, his voice regaining its familiar swagger, but now with a new depth, a profound resonance. "Let's show these blokes what real music is about, eh? Music for everyone. No exceptions. No bloody rules." He launched into the next song, a powerful bluesy number, but his performance was different. It was infused with a raw, almost primal energy, a defiant joy that resonated with every person in the hall. He played not just for the masses, but for Thomas, for every marginalized soul who had ever been told they didn't belong. Yoko, though not physically present, was there in spirit. Her influence, her unwavering belief in challenging conventions, in embracing the unconventional, was palpable. John's active defiance was a testament to the lessons she had taught him, the boundaries they had pushed together. The rest of the concert was a revelation. John spoke between songs, not with his usual cynical wit, but with a newfound earnestness, talking about the importance of empathy, of standing up for the underdog, of seeing the humanity in everyone. He spoke of his own struggles, his own feelings of being an outsider, a misfit, connecting with the audience on a level far deeper than mere celebrity. The audience, captivated, listened with a reverence that was almost spiritual. They had come for a concert, but they were witnessing something far more profound. A sermon, a confession, a powerful reaffirmation of the human spirit. The heckler, the security, the initial tension, all faded into insignificance, replaced by the overwhelming sense of unity, of shared humanity. John had not just defended a fan, he had defended an ideal. He had shattered the illusion of the detached superstar, revealing the fiercely empathetic man beneath, a man who remembered his roots, who understood the pain of being marginalized. The secret, unveiled in that moment of raw, protective fury, was the profound, unshakable connection John Lennon still held for the forgotten, the overlooked, the vulnerable. A connection rooted deep in the heart of Liverpool. A connection that transcended fame, wealth, and the rigid rules of the world. The final chords of John Lennon's set reverberated through the Liverpool Hall, leaving behind a profound, almost sacred silence. The applause that followed was not the usual frenzied roar, but a sustained, heartfelt ovation, a collective outpouring of respect and gratitude. It was an acknowledgement not just of the music, but of the man, of the courage he had shown, of the profound truth he had unveiled. John stood center stage, his guitar slung low, his eyes sweeping across the faces in the crowd. He saw the tears, the smiles, the quiet understanding. He saw Thomas, still in the front row, his face alight with a joy that transcended his physical limitations. In that moment, John felt a connection to his hometown, to his people, that was deeper and more meaningful than any chart-topping record or sold-out stadium. Backstage, the usual post-concert chaos was subdued. The band members, usually boisterous, moved with a quiet respect. The roadies, usually focused on packing up equipment, exchanged knowing glances. They had all witnessed John's primal fury, his unwavering defense of Thomas, and it had left an indelible mark. John, his face still etched with the lingering intensity of the evening, sat in his dressing room, a rare quietude settling over him. He was drained, utterly exhausted, yet there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. He had faced the rigid rules, the casual cruelty, and he had not flinched. He had defended the vulnerable, and in doing so, he had reaffirmed his own identity, his own deeply held values. "You handled that magnificently, John," his road manager, a seasoned veteran, said, his voice tinged with awe. "Never seen anything like it." John simply nodded, a faint, weary smile touching his lips. "Some things," he said, his voice raspy, "you just can't let stand, mate. Not in my town, not with my people." The protective instinct, so fiercely unleashed on stage, still simmered beneath the surface. The incident, though never fully reported in the mainstream press in its full, raw detail, became a whispered legend among those who were there. It was a story passed down through the Liverpool community, a testament to John Lennon's unwavering empathy, his fierce sense of justice, and his profound connection to his roots. It redefined his public image, not just as a peace-preaching icon, but as a man who would actively fight for the marginalized, for the overlooked, for anyone who was being pushed aside. For John, the confrontation was a catharsis. It had forced him to articulate, in the most public and visceral way possible, the depth of his feelings for the underdog. It had stripped away the layers of cynicism and artistic posturing, revealing the raw, human core of his being. He had shown the world that his fame was not a shield against the struggles of humanity, but a platform to amplify the voices of the voiceless. The consequences of that night were subtle, yet profound. The security guards, it was rumored, were given a stern lecture on empathy and discretion. The audience members carried the memory of John's chilling declaration, a silent reminder of the sacred boundaries of human dignity. And for John, his bond with Liverpool, with its people, was forged even tighter, tempered in the fire of shared understanding and defiant compassion. The echo of his words, "He stays right here," would resonate through his life, a constant, powerful truth. Years later, when the world would mourn the loss of John Lennon, those who had witnessed that night would remember not just the music, but the man. They would remember the raw courage, the unwavering empathy, the primal fury unleashed in defense of the vulnerable. They would remember the moment when the legends stepped aside, and the human heart, fierce and compassionate, stood exposed. The car pulled away from the venue, carrying John through the rain-slicked streets of Liverpool. He looked out at the familiar landscape, the terraced houses, the glowing streetlights, the shadows that held so many memories. He knew he would always be John Lennon, the Beatle, the icon. But tonight, he had also been John, the Liverpudlian, the man who remembered where he came from, who would always stand up for the underdog. The London night, once thick with the promise of a new dawn, now held the lingering chill of a truth laid bare. John and Yoko left the concert hall, not through the main entrance, but through a discreet side door, slipping into the waiting limousine like shadows. The city, with its ancient secrets and modern anxieties, seemed to hold its breath, absorbing the raw energy of the night's confrontation. Inside the car, the silence was profound, yet comfortable. The adrenaline had begun to recede, leaving behind a quiet exhaustion. John leaned his head back, his eyes closed, Yoko's hand still clasped firmly in his. The world outside, with its flashing cameras and shouting headlines, felt distant, irrelevant. He had faced down the hatred, not with violence, but with a chilling declaration of love and loyalty. He had shown the world the true cost of their judgment, the profound impact of their venom. And in doing so, he had reaffirmed, not just to Yoko, but to himself, the sacredness of their bond. The incident, though never fully reported in the mainstream press, became a whispered legend, a story passed down through the underground, a testament to the fierce, protective love that bound John Lennon to Yoko Ono. It was a moment that peeled back the layers of the public persona, revealing the raw, beating heart of a man who would defend his love with every fiber of his being. For John, the confrontation was a crucible. It had forced him to articulate, in the most public and visceral way possible, the depth of his feelings for Yoko. It had stripped away the layers of cynicism and artistic posturing, revealing the raw, human core of his being. He had shown the world that his love was not a weakness, but a strength, a shield against the slings and arrows of a hostile world. The consequences of that night were subtle yet profound. The heckler, it was rumored, never dared to attend another public event where John Lennon was present. The audience members carried the memory of John's chilling declaration, a silent reminder of the sacred boundaries of love and respect. And for John and Yoko, their bond, already strong, was forged even tighter, tempered in the fire of public hatred and defiant love. The echo of his vow, "We are one, we are indivisible," would resonate through their lives, a constant, powerful truth. Years later, when the world would mourn the loss of John Lennon, those who had witnessed that night would remember not just the music, but the man. They would remember the raw courage, the unwavering devotion, the primal fury unleashed in defense of the woman he loved. They would remember the moment when the legend stepped aside and the human heart, fierce and vulnerable, stood exposed. The car pulled up to their London residence, a sanctuary from the relentless gaze of the world. As they stepped out, hand in hand, the night air was cold, but their connection was a warmth that defied the chill. They walked into their home, leaving the echoes of the arena behind, carrying with them the unbreakable cord of their love. A melody that would resonate through history, a testament to a bond that no amount of hatred, no amount of public scorn could ever truly sever. The true secret of John and Yoko, it seemed, was not in their controversies, their art, or their fame, but in the quiet, unyielding strength of their love, a love so profound it could silence an arena and redefine the very meaning of a legend. And sometimes, the most powerful statements are not sung, but whispered. A chilling vow that reverberates through the ages, an unbreakable chord in the symphony of a life lived defiantly, passionately, and utterly without compromise.